Now it's time for the district breakdown. We welcome in Inside High School Sports Insider, Matt Harris, who's going to answer those tough questions about District 23 6A. Matt?
Thanks, Ashley. We're down to our final 2 weeks of season previews, and we've got two of the best for last. 23 6A is loaded with talent, and it's headlined by a school that has moved up from 5A, and here's a hint, they've only lost one game in school history. Shadow Creek joins the Pearland and Alief ISD schools, as well as Alvin and Straight Jesuit, who's one of the two private schools in the state that competes in the UIL. This district is packed with talent, and I'll start as I always do with my pick to win the district in the Shadow Creek Sharks. There's an argument to be made that the Sharks will have to adjust to 6A football and that they could slip a little in 2020. The other strong argument against the Shadow Creek District Championship is that they have to start losing sometime. They can't remain perfect in the regular season forever. But 2020 simply isn't the year that happens, even in a talented district. The Sharks returned 7 players in their senior class that will play Division I football, including quarterback Kyron Drones, a Nike Elite 11 finalist and Baylor commit. CJ Guidry and Randy Masters are also Division I recruits at wide receiver and will help Drones greatly, but the offensive line will need to replace some departing talent. Defense has always been Shadow Creek's calling card, and they'll be led by Terrence Cooks at linebacker, along with Jalen Emery and Jalen Lane in the secondary, all Division I recruits as well. There are plenty of talented starters to replace, but Shadow Creek has quickly become one of Houston's most elite programs. I like the Sharks to take yet another district title this season. I think there's a clear-cut next 3 schools to round out the playoff picture, but I think they could really go in any order. Here's my best guess. I'll go with the Dawson Eagles, who return 11 starters from a 10-win team last season. A familiar theme among the teams I think will make the playoffs outside of Shadow Creek is that each will be breaking in a brand new or fairly new quarterback. For Dawson, replacing Miles Kit Denton won't be easy, as the Eagles' former gunslinger was named District 23 6A MVP last season. Fortunately, whoever takes over at quarterback will have Jaden Stewart lining up next to him in the backfield. Stewart ran for more than 1,000 yards and 14 scores last season. While there are some questions on offense, Dawson's defense should be one of the best in the district. That unit returned 7 starters, including last year's 23 6A Defensive Player in the Year and defensive end Cameron Whitfield. Blake Smith will make an impact on offense and defense, and Carter Brown is one of the most lethal kickers in the greater Houston area. Dawson isn't a lock for the 2 spot, but they should certainly have another successful season. For the 3rd spot in the district, I'm going with Pearland. The Oilers will have to replace highly successful quarterback J.D. Head, and the early favorite to step into that spot is Jake Salk, who will be a junior. With Cedric Mitchell out wide and Torrance Burgess and Kennedy Lewis forming a solid 1-2 punch at running back, Salk will have good weapons around him if he's the one who takes over at quarterback. However, the offensive line will need to be rebuilt. On defense, the Oilers returned 5 starters, including a solid safety duo in Kelikolio Linton and Dylan Dixon. Pearland should have an impressive squad once again and will look to improve on an 8-3 season. The one thing to look for is Pearland will be in the Division I playoffs, where they've lost to Dickinson in the first round in each of the last 2 seasons. Look for the Oilers to try and lock up the 1 seed for Division I to avoid another first-round date with the Gators. Finally, we've got Straight Jesuit to round out the playoff picture. And remember, I think the teams from 2 to 4 could be seeded anywhere, so I'm not necessarily confident that Jesuit will be bringing up the rear when it's all said and done. Jesuit returns 12 starters and has won 10 games in each of the last 2 seasons. A good recipe for success. The catch is, like Dawson and Pearland, the Crusaders will be replacing a quarterback, and I have no clue who will fill that spot. Whoever steps up at quarterback will be the beneficiary of 7 returning offensive starters and a solid offensive line that includes a pair of 3-year starters in Max Merrill and Luke Melton. The offense will feature Robert Smith at wide receiver and a duo of Alex May and Joel Crawford in the backfield, but the defense will be the strength. The Crusaders will feature a strong front 7 that includes Jacob Syke on the line and Jace Bordelon at linebacker. Lance Sizen was one of Straight's top defenders a year ago, and he'll lead a young secondary. Although I have Jesuit 4th in the district for now, don't be surprised if they finish higher. The round robin between the Crusaders and the Pearland schools I've already mentioned will decide the playoff order. My first 2 out was a toss-up, but I'm going to go with Alief Hastings in the 5 spot. The Bears went 4-6 last season after making the playoffs in 2018 and lost a narrow game 24-23 to Alvin Taylor, the team they'll be trying to beat out for the 5 seed or a playoff spot. The Bears returned 15 starters, which is well more than half on each side of the ball, and they'll be anchored by a strong offensive line and defensive line. Like most of the rest of the district, the Bears will have to figure out who steps in at quarterback. The line and running back Darian Houston will help aid that transition on offense. The defense will be led by Winfred Donahue and Neron Jackson. I don't see a playoff appearance in the cards for Hastings this season because 23-6A is such a deep district, but the Bears will be good for a handful of wins. As I mentioned, I have Alvin Taylor slotting in at 6, but they could easily be 5. The Lions have put together back-to-back 3-7 seasons, which isn't particularly impressive, but that's also a little misleading. Taylor easily could have gone 5-5 last season after 2 close district losses, and they didn't help themselves out by taking 2 L's in non-district play to 2 of the better teams in the area in Klein Collins and Spring Westfield. A new coach in Sean Gray could bring in some new ideas, and he'll be armed with something that only 2 other teams in the district have, a returning quarterback in Esteban Torres. The top weapons for Torres, who doubles as a kicker by the way, will be Tyler King out wide and Jordan Conception at running back, and a defensive offensive line. For the defense, Everett Haven and Mays Washington will lead the way. Expect the showdown with Hastings to be important to where Taylor finishes in the district standings. Next up is Elsik. The Rams struggled to a 2-8 record last season and will look to improve on that, but it won't be easy in a tough district. Elsik will have a returning starting quarterback though, a luxury that most don't have in this district. David Haley saw some time as a freshman and will look to improve in his sophomore season. Adrian Brown will return as running back as well after missing half the 2019 season with an injury. Nathaniel Joseph and Paris Falls will make up a decent receiving core, and the defense will be led by another young player in Chris Garrett. The Rams will be young, but they have a good mix of youth and experience. It'll be tough to string together wins in such a tough district, but it bodes well for the future. We round things out with Alvin, who moves over from 24-6A. It was a tough year for the Yellow Jackets, who went 0-10 for the second straight season and was shut out in 7 of 10 games. Alvin will have no shortage of competition for the starting quarterback job. Gavin Guthrie held down the spot last season but also plays defense. Alvin could move him there full-time with 2 capable quarterbacks waiting in the wings, including sophomore Jaden Garcia. I think starting a sophomore would be smart to give the team some continuity at the spot for the next 3 years. Outside of that, Christian Touch and Armando Rivera will be the top targets for whoever the Yellow Jackets roll with at QB. The defense will feature Larry Voyasek on the line and Bo Olszewski in the secondary. If Guthrie moves from quarterback to linebacker full-time, that would give the Jackets a reliable playmaker at each level of the defense. The main goal for Alvin this season should be to get a few wins on the board and build momentum moving forward. Now for my team and player to watch. My team to watch is the Pearland Oilers. After 2 straight seasons of getting bounced in the first round, it feels like 2020 could be the year the Oilers get back to their winning ways in the playoffs. It won't be easy and they'll probably need to beat Dawson and Strake Jesuit, but wins against those 2 would almost assuredly lock up that 2 spot, which would be the number 1 seed for Division I if Shadow Creek wins the district. Pearland will hope Jake Sock is ready for the spotlight at quarterback because the Oilers will have plenty of talent around him. My final order of business is my player to watch for 23-6A, and it's a pretty obvious choice for me. The quarterback is the driver of the team in today's pass-heavy game, making it a position of utmost importance. It's hard to win without a good signal caller. Fortunately, Shadow Creek has one of the best in the state, and they play in a district that lacks experience at the quarterback spot. That's why Kyron Drones is my player to watch. The Baylor Pledge already has a state ring on his finger after just 1 season as a starter, and Nike recognized him as one of the top gunslingers in the nation by inviting him to its Elite 11 quarterback competition. Drones threw for nearly 3,500 yards and a whopping 46 touchdowns while adding another 18 scores on the ground. He's one of the state's preeminent dual-threat quarterbacks, and I can't wait to see what's in store for his senior season, now against elevated competition in Class 6A. That's all I've got for this week, and we'll wrap up our Greater Houston area previews next week with 24-6A.